How to build a container image using BuildKit. When you first start out building container images, more than likely, you're just using Docker build. However, did you know that there is another tool available that will help us build container images? That tool is BuildKit. BuildKit was integrated into Docker in version 18.06, and specifically, it focuses on build performance, storage management, and a few other options. Here's today's starting point. I have a Jenkins LTS controller version 2.319.1. Attached to this controller, I have a Linux-based agent that has Docker installed on it. For this video, I have a sample repository. The link to that repository is down in the description. And let's go ahead and take a look at that repository. What I have is 2 Jenkins files and 2 Docker files, and we'll look and see how these Docker files are being used within these Jenkins files. Now let's go ahead and take a look at our Docker file first. And what we have here at line 1 is syntax docker/dockerfile 131. Now this is what is called a Docker front end, and BuildKit uses this in helping to build the images. If you want to see more information about docker/dockerfile, you can just go out to Docker Hub and search for docker/dockerfile. And what you can see here is that the latest releases are 131 and then alias to 131 and then latest. But nobody likes using latest, so I'm going to specify 131 in my syntax right here. And if we take a look at the rest of this Docker file, you can see that we're using a multi-stage build. Now, they're all trivial examples. I'm just creating a file within the temp directory in each of these stages, but then I put in a sleep. And this is where we're going to see the major differences between just using Docker build and Docker build where BuildKit is enabled. Now to start out, let's look and see what our normal Docker build is going to do. Now if we take a look at our Jenkinsfile-docker, which will just be using Docker build, what we're going to have is a system prune to clean everything out on our agent. And then I'm going to put time in front of Docker build so I know how long this one step takes. And what we're saying is Docker build, we're giving it a tag, and then we're specifying first. Then we're going to list out Docker images. And then again, we're going to do a build, but this time we're going to be using Dockerfile second. And again, show Docker images. So what is this Dockerfile second? We'll go back up here and take a look at it. It's exactly the same as Dockerfile first, except we've added in a 4th stage. So that's the only thing. So once it actually builds this final image, we're just doing another copy from temp to temp. So Dockerfile first is the first 3 stages. Dockerfile second just adds in this stage 4. So let's go ahead and go on over to our controller and create a job to run the Jenkinsfile-docker. Before we go over there, let me go ahead and grab my URL. So let's go ahead and click on New Item. We're going to give it a name of Docker. Select Pipeline, click OK. We're going to change this from SCM. Our SCM is Git. For repository URL, the branch is main. And our script path is -docker. We'll click on Save. And let's go ahead and click on Build Now and watch what happens as this job runs. So we see our checkout. We do our clean, which it was already empty. We build our first stage, and that takes just a few seconds, but then it sleeps for 6 seconds. Then we move on into our second stage, which then is into an 8-second sleep. Finally, we are into our third stage, and now we're into a 10-second sleep. Do you see a pattern here? Each time we run our stages, we sleep for this amount of time, and it's all running sequentially. Now, what we can see once it finished is that the real time was about 30 seconds. And if you think about it, 6 plus 8 plus 10 is 24, plus the overhead of the job starting and the other things that were happening, about 30 seconds, what we would expect. But take a look at the output of Docker images. Remember the image that we created was this image right here. And that's fine. But also notice all of these other intermediate images that exist from using Docker build. We also have our base Alpine image pulled in here as well. Now, the second part of this job runs the exact same process, except that it's using Dockerfile-second, which added in that fourth stage. So if we take a look at stage 1, it's using cache. Stage 2, using cache. Stage 3, also using cache. But then, once we get to stage 4, it does the run, it sleeps for another 10 seconds, creates the final image as 002. Now the real time in this was about 11 seconds. The 10-second sleep in that stage 4 plus the overhead of the rest of the job ran for about a second and a half. But again, taking a look at our Docker image output, we see our first image tagged at 001, our second image tagged at 002, but you'll also notice that yet again we have another intermediate layer that's left laying around. Now let's go back over to our repository and take a look at the second Jenkins file. When we take a look at Jenkinsfile-buildkit, everything is exactly the same, except for a couple of very small items. In order to enable buildkit, we need to set an environment variable, and we're setting it at the global level, docker_buildkit equals 1. That's it. That's all you need to set in order to enable buildkit within Docker. We do our Docker system prune, we're running time. I'm taking advantage of a -- progress equals plain because otherwise it shows it in a different format. By doing it in plain, that's plain text. That works out much better in the console log. But otherwise, everything else in the Docker build step is exactly the same. We do Docker images. Again, we add in progress plain for the second run for second, but otherwise exactly the same. So 3 material changes to this Jenkins file. The 2 progress planes on the build steps, and the most important one is the docker_buildkit as a global environment variable. Let's go set up another job to run this Jenkins file. Run back over to our controller, new item, we'll call this buildkit pipeline, click OK. If we go ahead and take a look at SCM, we will go ahead and change SCM to Git, put in our URL, change this to main, and the script path to buildkit, Jenkinsfile-buildkit to be complete. Let's click on Save, and click on Build Now. Now, as we run this, think back to the Docker job that we just ran. The very first pass-through with the Dockerfile-first took about 30 seconds. Watch how long this one takes. One of the things with buildkit is it's built to increase build performance. So what it's doing is that it is going through and parsing that Docker file and determining what can be run in parallel. So what's happening here is it's going through and running the job, breaking out each of those stages within the Docker file itself, not with Jenkins, but within the Docker file itself, and parallelizing the builds of those first 3 stages. So when we take a look at, in fact, we can see it here. Here's stage 3, 1 of 3. Sort of looks strange, but then here's stage 1, 2 of 3, and stage 2, 2 of 3, which sort of strange, but here's all of our items, and then here's stage 1, 3 of 3. So all of these things are going through in parallel within the Docker daemon using buildkit. Now check this out. Look at our total runtime here. When we ran it with just Docker build without buildkit, it took about 30 seconds. Here, it took about 15 seconds. This really speeds up the build. Now, here's the other thing that's really interesting. If we take a look at the output of Docker images, think back to the previous one. We saw Alpine and a bunch of different intermediate images until we finally see our 001. With buildkit, we only have the final image. All the other intermediates, even the base image, gone. Doesn't mean it wasn't there, but once this job completes, the only image that is here is the image that we built. Now, let's continue on. Now we do our Docker build using Dockerfile-second. Again, same thing. We're running in parallel. In fact, we added in that stage 4. Now with stage 4, again, about a 10-second build, but that was the only major difference. The other 3 stages were already cached, so we were able to take advantage of those. We're back down to 11 seconds, which in reality is about the same as what we saw in the very first job. The real impact in running BuildKit for us this time was in that very first pass. With the Docker job, it took about 30 seconds. With BuildKit, it took about 15 seconds. And finally, again, what we see are the images that we want, the final images. So in this case, it's the myapp001 and myapp002. And none of the other intermediate images are there. Now, there's one thing you might not even know. You actually don't even need Docker to run BuildKit. As I said earlier, BuildKit has been integrated into Docker since 18.06. But if you are running Linux, there is a standalone version of BuildKit that you can run, eliminating the need to even install Docker. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach out to us on Twitter @CloudBees. If this video was helpful to you, give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to CloudBees TV yet, why not? Take a moment, click on that subscribe button, and then ring that bell, and you'll be notified anytime there's new content available on CloudBees TV. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.